I'm Presto, and you're watching Pros and Joy-Cons. Today, we're going to dive into the pros and cons of Nintendo's first 3 home console controllers. This is the first major home console controller other than the Atari. We can't deny the impact that this revolutionary piece of plastic had on the industry. Nintendo set out to reinvent the wheel, and that they did, telling their competitors, hey, here's my homework. If you want a copy of it, just make sure you change it a little bit. Since it was one of the first controllers to come out, it doesn't have a way to connect to your NES without plugging in. However, Nintendo did release a wireless version that's available for Nintendo Switch Online members to buy. This controller's buttons just feel good to use. Your thumb sinks into the D-pad and the buttons are always satisfying to push down. Unfortunately, there aren't many buttons to push down. It has a D-pad, 2 menu buttons, and 2 in-game buttons. The NES's controller layout is like the food, warmth, shelter of video game controllers. Do I need anything more? No. The NES controller is bare bones, to say the least. The simple design does help it here to create an iconic look that isn't easy to forget. Nothing can beat the slick red and gray look of the NES controller. It's one of those things that will always be timeless. Right up there with Mario Galaxy, Tax Evasion, and of course, Plock. Problematically, the boxy rectangle design of the NES controller is also a pain for your palms. The corners of the controller jab into your hands until you have a new indent right next to the one you got from playing Tug of War in Mario Party. Luckily, Nintendo learned what ergonomic meant for their next controller. Yeah, that's right. The SNES controller actually had rounded corners. This was a huge upgrade from the NES, and if anybody doesn't agree with me, they deserve to be thrown into Rico Harbor. The rounded edges of the controller snap perfectly into your palms for an ergonomic experience that just feels right. Like the NES controller before it, the Super Nintendo controller only came in wired variants, until Nintendo released a wireless version exclusively for NSO members. Hey, maybe I could pick one of those up. Never mind. The SNES controller introduced the 4-button ABYX controller that's still in use by the Switch today. Doubling the face buttons of the NES while also setting a layout trend used by all of Nintendo's major rivals even now. The controller itself is round on the sides, but not really in the back. This leaves it with a very flat feel and look that modern controllers just don't have. It's also very small. Wait. Small? Thin? Flat? Unlike other controllers, the SNES controller is a Joy-Con. It's often forgotten that this controller has shoulder buttons, one of the first few to introduce them. They weren't used often, but they still have a nice feel to them. The Super Famicom controller just looks better. The mismatched, colorful buttons just pop a lot more than the muted purples of the Super Nintendo, and convey the sense of fun that Nintendo has always held. In comparison, the SNES controller feels bland and corporate. Luckily, they didn't keep that blandness going into the N64 controller. Not only does this have a slew of colorful buttons, but it also comes in a bunch of different variants, including some translucent colored ones that are very cool. Nintendo should bring those back. I would pay so much money for atomic purple translucent Waluigi branded Joy-Cons. This controller looks like it was made for somebody who wandered into Chernobyl with 2 hands and wandered out with 3. For some reason, Nintendo decided to go with a 3-pronged attack here, and the result is the weirdest looking controller I've ever seen. Okay, so maybe not the weirdest. Still, this controller both looks weird when staring at it, and feels weird when playing with it. This is the first Nintendo controller to have a joystick, and one a surprisingly small amount that has both a joystick and a D-pad. I also really like the directional joystick design, having different notches for each direction, as opposed to the smooth joysticks of modern controllers. Big surprise, this controller is wired only, unless you become a subscriber to, say it with me kids, Nintendo Switch Online! Has a nice
3D shape to it, and it feels nice when you're playing it without using the right stick. Since this was very early 3D, there's no second stick. This works just fine on the original controller, but makes it confusing as heck when I'm playing the games on Nintendo Switch Online with Joy-Cons.
And there you have it, folks. I think you've heard everything you need to know about these controllers. I'll be coming back to do more of these in future episodes, so keep your eyes, ears, and other senses open by subscribing. Leave a like and comment down below your favorite and least favorite parts of each controller. I'll see you on the Switch side.